Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Network Collective. This is an off-the-cuff episode being recorded here at Cisco Live in Las Vegas, Nevada. Today we're going to be taking a look at a topic. It's based on a conversation and an observation that I've been having with some people in this community, and that is that we're seeing engineering kind of disappearing from the enterprise. And so we want to talk around this and see if this panel of guests that we have here actually agree with that premise, and then also what the implications are from that migration. But before we dive into that, I want to give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves, and we're going to start off with Denise.
Hi, I'm Denise Donohue. I'm a business architect for NetCraftsman, and you can find me on Twitter at Lady Networker.
Hi, I'm Michael Zsiga, also known as Zsiga in the community. I work at E+ as a lead technical architect. And you can find me at Twitter at Michael_Zsiga.
I'm Jeff Fry. I work for Dimension Data as a senior consultant. You can find me on the web at fryguy.net or on Twitter at fryguy_PA.
Hi, my name is Daniel Dib. I'm a senior network architect, and you can find me on Twitter as Daniel Dib SWE, and my blog is lostintransit.se.
All right, and to complete the circle here, my name is Jordan Martin. I'm one of the co-hosts of Network Collective. I'm at BCJordo on Twitter. I blog occasionally at jordanmartin.net. All right, so let's start. Let's dive in. The very first idea, first question that I have for you guys is, do you agree? Do you agree that there seems to be, over time, a migration of engineering and architect skills moving out of the enterprise, and that we're seeing more enterprise customers leaving those types of decisions to vendors, VARs, and cloud providers?
I kind of agree. I'll jump in.
Okay.
I kind of agree. I see that happening some. As far as the reasons for that, I think is what's important to look at. I think it's because networks have become so complex. How can you possibly know everything there is to know about all the different technologies that go into a network now? It's not just put a router here, a firewall here, and some switches down here where users connect anymore, and life is good. And then the data center is over here. Everything is integrating. Everything works together. Things are virtualizing so much, and unless you're a really large company, you can't really afford to have someone who knows all those different technologies well enough to advise you on how to integrate them all.
Okay.
So on that side, on the design side, I think it's very valid to call in external resources, and probably a good use of money to call in external resources when you need them, and then let them go do other stuff, not on your dime when you don't.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, I totally agree with the premise of the conversation today. My perspective is that I think we're going to see that more often over the next probably 5, 10 years, maybe 15 years. We're going to see enterprise customers, enterprise companies going away from having maybe even like a CCIE or CCDE on staff to having like maybe just O&M or operations and maintenance type of people on staff that kind of maintain and do the day-to-day tickets, the monitoring, and then they call in, an expert to help them troubleshoot something or help them build out something brand new. I think it comes down to a business decision more than anything else, more than a technical decision. I mean, businesses to get someone that is a CCIE or has those skill sets, it's going to be expensive, and they're going to want to probably cut costs where they can, and that's going to be a lot cheaper long term than having someone on staff.
I hope you're wrong.
Just my view. Right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and could happen. I hope that companies won't get away from having knowledgeable, expert people on their staffs that can take the stuff that maybe they brought in someone outside to help them design and maybe even implement, and then maintain it well and grow it even.
There's also the nuances of internal politics and budgeting, and some of the internal senior people, maybe not always the architects, but the senior people and the IT staff need to be able to help shepherd projects along. As a consultant, they take our value, but the internal people, the ones sometimes who can sell it to the executives and to their peers to say, this is what we need to do. yes, he says this, but here's the other parts that go with it that we may not be aware of internally.
Yeah, I think it's like a trend now for everything to be as a service. So they want to have like cost control and want to have it on tap, and they don't want to keep all of the resources internally. So that's why they get outside help and outsource like IT to other companies.
Well, so I ask another question to everyone. Like, I mean, with the automation and the orchestration kind of push, I know not all the companies are adopting that right now, but I mean, some of the bigger companies are. I mean, we talk about Google and Facebook and even LinkedIn, and some of my customers are adopting automation and orchestration with whatever vendor-specific solution that's out there. Once these automation and orchestration solutions are deployed, I don't know if we even really need to know the underlying technology to an extent. I mean, I view that I would want to know it, right? Because I want to be able to know how to troubleshoot BGP and OSPF and whatever protocol that's running underneath the hood. But from a business perspective, do they really need to know that? That's the question I kind of ask.
I mean, that's an ongoing conversation in our industry,
Yeah.
right? We have, this two sides, right? The fundamentals and deep understanding of technology. A lot of people still believe that will be incredibly relevant as we move forward. There are other people who want to believe that it gets set up, the highly technical stuff is done, and now we don't have to dive into that level of detail.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know that any of us know the answer where that's going. I mean, but it's an interesting, it's interesting that it immediately went there because it's just an ongoing conversation in our industry.
Yeah. But generally speaking, technology is too complex today, and that's why we're seeing like companies like Cisco push SDA now with the campus fabric. So instead of like thinking of every device as just one box, you need to like think more holistically about the entire network and where traffic flows.
They're trying to make it easier for the common person to be able to deploy a network.
Yeah.
Automate it and have a policy engine or orchestration engine to push down whatever you want to do.
Which would lead to your scenario of not having.
You see where my logic is going,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sadly,
I just hope
and I
it's
hate
wrong.
to say it because, I mean, we all are in this field and it really will affect all of us, the mass community that we have. So,
Now, there's some, I think there's some conflicting trends, and I agree with everything that's been said, but when we talk about pushing out these resources, and let's leave cloud out of it for now. Let's just talk about having vendors or VARs, bringing them in to help design engineering and high-level troubleshooting. Vendors clearly are specific to one vendor. VARs tend to be fairly specific to one vendor. Not all, right?
Yep.
But there's a lot of focus. I mean, there's a lot of Cisco-specific VARs, HP-specific VARs, right? The idea, so when you do that, yet there's a push towards disaggregation, white box, there's things that we kind of want to get away from VAR dependence. Those two things seem to sit at odds with each other. What do you guys think about that?
Yes, you're right. Okay.
So I'm channeling Russ White a little bit here because for him, he sees the network as a competitive advantage or a potential to be competitive advantage, and maybe not every business is this way. I mean, there's probably a lot of businesses where just having a network and making sure that we can get traffic from A to B is enough. But there's a lot of businesses where if we can make the network behave in some interesting or particular way that's unique to us, it could give us some sort of advantage over our competition. And in those cases, would it not make sense to have engineer and architecture type people on staff rather than depending upon a specific vendor? It seems limiting to me.
Yeah, like Denise said, that I think we're still going to need like people like architects and designers to help the businesses. So even if it gets easier to implement the technologies, they're still going to need help with that side. And yeah.
So I think that what will probably happen, again, we're all guessing here, right? So I think VARs or vendor, like value-added resellers, will have to kind of change their models a little bit, where instead of focusing on the hardware sales and maybe a little bit on the software side, be more strategic and more kind of that technical advisor role within companies, and really build out offerings that are like a virtual architect type of offering. Like instead of having someone on staff, you have not managed services per se, but like a managed like architect type of offering. which is cheaper theoretically than having an architect on staff.
I mean,
That's an idea.
that's a great idea. All of us now,
We're all hoping.
I'll disclaimers aside, everyone at this table works for a VAR. We're all,
That's a great idea.
yeah, which one of us is going to go make that happen now? But I mean, it's interesting you bring that up. It's actually a conversation we've been having internally. I don't know about you guys, because there's the company I work for is a Cisco VAR. That's what we do. I mean, that's and it's the traditional VAR model, and it's worked for a long time. But our customers need architecture help. They need someone to help them have that discussion before they make the purchase, before they engage with a vendor or someone who's VAR specific. But I don't know that exists on the market yet. I mean, have you guys seen that where someone's providing some, architecture independent of vendor dependence?
Well, I think a lot of us do, because I think that's something that we're realizing that we in our own careers, in our own selves, need to do is look beyond the Cisco solution, or look at the whole big picture and go, okay, you're a historically Cisco shop. Here's a way to do it through Cisco. But have you also considered this, or maybe this fits better to do partial this, partial that? I think it's as architects, we have got to start learning about the whole big picture of other options too.
Right, Jeff, I think you might have an interesting perspective as well, because I know you've been doing a lot of work with some vendors other than Cisco.
Yeah, I work. My other primary vendor isn't Cisco, but I mean, I think we can come into from our experiences and help them avoid some of the pitfalls we've seen our other customers make, because we've been through the pains. Some of us came up through the enterprises. We've learned. We've made the mistakes. We can help them prevent those mistakes and save the money. And you're right, being able to understand other vendors besides the big boxes, it's like, there may be a better solution that actually gives you a competitive advantage because you don't have to spend the money, and here's how it'll impact your business better. Yes, you have this option, you have this option, you have this option. Here's the good, here's the bad about each. We think this one's going to be best, but yet it's your business. But we can help you lead your direction.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here a bit, though, because I think we're talking about a theoretical thing that doesn't really exist. There are motivations, right? We as so I'm on the post-sale side. I don't sell equipment primarily. I do advise customers on occasion for those that I work with dramatically. But some of the conversations, like if my AM were involved with that conversation, they may not have been too happy with what I said, right? Because I like you said, we try to do it. Like, I mean, as an engineer, I want to live with integrity, right? I want to present the best solution that I possibly can to my customers, even if it's not always in the best interest of the company that I work for. I don't know that the account managers and senior executives of our companies would agree with that, though, and they're not driving there. And I don't know. I can't speak for all of yours, and mine sit on. They try to ride that balance, right? Because the reality is they have better deals with some vendors than others. Mm-hmm. There's more profit, and all of us, at the end of the day, we do this so that we can put food on the table and pay our bills, right? So I don't know that it exists. Like I want to challenge you guys. Like, I mean, like, it's a great idea, but is that really happening, or does it happen from, do you find the right engineer? Maybe that's the question. Maybe the due diligence of finding the right engineer who's willing to not necessarily be the company guy.
I think it's already starting. Personally, I think there's kind of, and maybe evolution's not the right word, maybe revolution, but whatever you want to use. I think something's already happening in the industry. I know for me, like, again, all of it is going back to the business side and really mapping everything from a business perspective. Understanding your customer's business drivers, requirements, constraints, and then deploying or not deploying, developing a design or an architecture per the requirements, right? I mean, and this is kind of a CCDE push, right? But still, forget about the certification. Really being that technical advisor from a business perspective, I see that already happening. And I think that it's only going to continue to happen. Businesses are going to realize that, this is important to us, and then we can go in and say, hey, we can come up with a vendor agnostic solution. Doesn't matter if it's Cisco, Juniper, HP, whatever vendor you want to throw in the mix, and we can actually meet your business requirements the best that we can with flexibility and scalability and so on and so forth.
So true. That's huge. Yeah. It's a business that's got to drive it. But I think any VAR, any company in general that puts its needs above the needs of its customers is employing a really short-term solution. Long-term, what's right for the customer, you've got to do what's right for the customer, because what's right for the customer ends up being what's right for your business.
Right. Oh, that's absolutely
Exactly the
true.
truth.
I think there's competing priorities for that in the sense of there's
Yeah.
there's today
It's not
versus
always
tomorrow.
easy.
It's not always easy to take
It's
the
not
high
always
road.
the easiest
but that,
solution.
and I've brought up my company. My company would agree with that. Everyone would say that. But at the end of the day, if there's three options on the table and they're all somewhat similar, we're going to lean one direction, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, of course.
But I think that you can still like sell with integrity, even if you're like just pushing one vendor. Like, explain what's the pros and cons with that solution without like talking down another vendor.
oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you truly believe that's the right solution for them. I mean, that's the big point. Yeah, maybe I'll make $5 more on this solution, but that solution. But what you've got to recommend to the customer is which one you think is the right solution for them.
Sure. It's just turning into a conversation about
know, really.
our
It's
relationships. No, it's all right.
Completely
It's-
different from what
right.
you want to talk
And
about.
I think some of that's where having them have a decent IT resource on site, whether it's an architect or a high senior engineer, can help some of that.
Right. This
They're gonna
is leading
understand this
back to
Thanks
that.
for bringing it
There's-
back, Jeff.
there's value in that, right? There's value in having someone who is technical who can validate what's being told to the company. Like I think the problem is that if we see the exit of highly technical people in organizations, it's going to be hard to validate what your VAR or your vendor or the cloud provider is doing as a good technology. It's going to be built a lot on trust, not necessarily on yes, that makes sense.
It's also the senior IT directors don't always understand the technology to do something. So they're looking at Gartner quadrants. We want to go this way. This is the answer. And where it's like, well, let's hold off. Let's talk about what you really need and have somebody internally can go, I understand the technology you're trying to get to. What you want to do isn't possible without this. I'm actually dealing with that with one of my customers now. They want to go this direction. It's like, well, we need to do some of this stuff to get you there. We can't just jump there today. It's going to take a little bit. And the internal IT guy has been wonderful trying to facilitate a lot of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he gets the ear. He can go to lunch when I'm remote. He can go to lunch with the director and talk about the stuff that being a consultant coming in, if we're not there every day, we don't have some of those relationships.
Right. Now, Denise said something earlier. Yeah, getting called out. Oh no! What did I say? No, it was a good point, and that is, and you spoke to it as well. Is that the network's getting more complex, right? And there's almost a requirement now that we push this out. So I mean, let's speak to that a little bit about. I guess there's some real positive aspects to the fact that we're looking for specific engineering talent outside of the organization, because I know that from when I was working in enterprise, my path was jack of all trades. You can only be so good when you start out at being the jack of all trades. You can only focus so much, and you specialize more and more and more. Obviously, the deeper you can go in whatever technology you're specializing in, that's becoming harder. because the specialties, there's becoming more specialties, and they're deeper than they've ever been before. And so, how do you, So I mean, I guess I'm validating the point. I don't know if there's any other thoughts on that, but it's an interesting perspective that with the complexity, it's almost a requirement anymore.
Think of your house. I could fix a toilet, but do I? I could paint a room, but do I? I think for the business, the same thing. You bring in an expert for that short-term job you need them for.
You get the efficiencies, you get their
Yeah.
experience, you get, like you're saying, to fix a toilet, yeah, you can do it, but it's going to take you 3 hours and 2 trips to Lowe's. Calling the plumber is going to be done in 20 minutes.
So I got to jump on that too, even to an extent. So for me, I don't mow my lawn. I hire someone else to mow the lawn, and it's a service. It's a monthly service. So I made the decision that
Is it a
my
cloud
time-
service?
Yeah, it's a cloud service.
The virtual lawn.
It's a virtual cloud service. You don't actually see the lawnmower.
You just know it's there.
Just
But no,
someone
I
else's
mean,
lawnmower, man.
I mean, if you think about it from a business perspective, I guess it's not really. I don't run a business, right, for that. But my time was more valuable than mowing the lawn. So I hire someone else to come and mow the lawn.
But when a lawn is well mowed, and
That's true.
Yes,
you
that's
know if you know the parameters. So to Jeff's point about having someone on staff who understands the technology, understands the business drivers, and can evaluate whether or not a proposed solution is actually really what you need is, I think, important.
Maybe not as deep as it had to be in the past.
Yeah.
But the idea of being able to, maybe there's all kinds of things that go into mowing the lawn that I don't know, right? There's chemicals you put on it that work and they do things, and I don't know what all those do. But I can tell you the end result
Yeah.
is what I want it to be, and I know what that end result should be. So maybe the technologist doesn't need to be someone who's like super deep in networking, but can at least know enough to speak to and understand, here are our requirements, here are the constraints because of our business, and here's what it's got to look like at the end. And I need to know that you can deliver that to me. And then let's talk about the solution, at least at a level that I understand that can make that happen.
But then what if, okay, to carry this analogy further than it probably should be
He's getting
carried.
excited.
I can relate to lawn mowing. All right. So what if this were a lawn, like a landscape service, say, and so, but in between the times they came, you needed to pull the weeds from your flower garden, or you needed someone to, I don't know, do the little trimmer thing around the edges, whatever it's called.
Still need to maintain.
Yeah, to
Maintain
maintain.
it, yep.
Or maybe you wanted to plant a new little bit of flowers over here, so maybe grow it a little bit. So you need someone with some knowledge that can do that and some skills to do that.
Yeah, but I think like as an architect, I enjoy the most when I have like a good counterpart at the company, because it's gonna be a lot better design, because he has both like the entire background of the company, their technologies, and maybe hopefully like knows the business people as well. So it's a lot easier to create a good design if you have a good counterpart in the customer. And I enjoy working the most if they're like already have a few technical people, but they like need help with the design part.
So I guess a follow-on to what we've been discussing, like what type of role are we thinking? Like what would you, I mean, it's not like a CTO role at an enterprise. I mean,
I think it's too broad, right? Yeah.
so it's got to be some sort of like business and technical role within enterprise that is like a key element that can talk to both outside architects and outside design experts, and then bring those business requirements together and kind of map everything between the two different entities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it might be a return to maybe broader roles inside. We've talked about, full stack engineers and all that, and I think that's probably a bit
DevOps.
too deep. But no, but I think that, like maybe, again, not as deep as having a IE or DE type engineer on staff, but still having someone who can speak to the requirements, but maybe that person then can be broader than just networking. Maybe they can also talk to that systems and storage or whatever else.
The troubleshoot, all right, so to troubleshoot an issue with the network now,
This is the problem, right?
Yeah.
Because I look at automation orchestration, I get very excited about it, but then at the other end of it, like it's still all the stuff we've always done, but now there's just a layer of abstraction sitting on top of it. When that stuff breaks underneath it, it's still the same hard things to fix.
And someone needs to be there. Someone
Right.
knows this stuff.
You can't schedule. Like, I'm scheduled through October. Waiting till October to fix your BGP peering issue is not going to work, right?
And when the customer's down, they need somebody they can call who's there and ready to do it.
So
Versus trying to say, hey, Jordan, can you come fix this? Well, I'm on vacation. I don't have my laptop. Let me see if I can get somebody else who doesn't know your environment to help you.
right.
Like tech, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you either have a managed service, so you've outsourced it, like going back to the topic of discussion, or you need people on staff.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's both. like most engineering answers, it's
I would say until the orchestration and the automation kind of matures, I do see that maybe being able to be self-healing, it knowing to troubleshoot when it needs to troubleshoot, because that's in my mind where I see that going. Because once things can determine, hey, my BGP neighborship's down, something's wrong, well, let me figure out what it is. As long as it's not a physical outage, I don't know if we're going to really be needed to troubleshoot at that point.
Apparently, you're far more optimistic than I am.
I'm a big automation fan.
Yeah,
Artificial AI.
is huge.
Automation's
Yeah.
great. We were actually having this conversation. I had a conversation with Greg and Ethan from Packet Pushers yesterday about this, about specifically around some of this, a correlation of machine, and we're so far away from that right now.
So how far do you think we are? 5 years? 10 years? I mean, we're talking about
this
the
is a
engineer of
deep
the
discussion,
future.
so we'll
I
try
don't
to keep
think
it just
we're
a couple
that
minutes. Yeah. I think we're pretty far, and the reason why is because when you look at machine learning, there's the two, and I'm like the worst person to talk about this because I don't know the terms or anything. But there's basically two types. There's the one where humans feed information in, and basically profile something, and then the computer learns through many iterations what something is. And so I was using this example last night in a bar, obviously, right? Like, here's the Volkswagen Beetle, right? We take a picture from the front. This is what a Volkswagen Beetle looks like. But then the computer sees a picture from the side, and it doesn't know what the side profile is. Human has to tell it what that is, right? And here's from the back and the top, and then here's all the other angles. And the more human input that computer has, the smarter it gets. And again, I know there are very technical terms, and I'm the worst person to talk about it, but that's the one case. The other case is where the computer learns itself through associations, right? So, we give it only the front picture, and then somehow, right, through logic internally, it determines what the side, back, top, and other angles are. And so to me, our current generation of machine learning really is signature based. Like, we can have bigger data sets and bigger signatures that allow for detection of more anomalies, but as soon as we get to something outside of the known data set, we're very far away still from intelligent decisions about how to fix a problem that wasn't an expected issue. And so the difference, the reason why we're starting to see some automation systems that have some great results is because we can program bigger data sets and reference those bigger data sets, but it's still, all it is an engineer planned for it beforehand, told the computer this is how to react to it, and so it's signature based still. It's not necessarily detection and modification.
All right, so how many troubleshooting issues are the same? Could you say this?
A lot can be signature based, like a BGP peer going down. Like, there's a certain things to check. Is the remote AS number the right? Yeah. Am I coming from the right interface? There's a lot of things that we could automate in that. I still think that because every network is a special snowflake, and we don't seem to adopt standard designs very often, it's going to be very hard to get to that point.
Yeah.
It's kind of been done a little bit. Remember NetMRI, Terry Slattery's thing, the CCI in a box. He had it's still round, and we still use it a lot. Oddly enough.
That's surprising. I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
By the way, we
goes through a
recorded
list
an
of
episode
things.
just a few minutes ago, and Terry got a lot of love in that episode. So yeah, you'll have to watch that one. Yeah.
Oh, really? No, you didn't do it around. But that was kind of that concept of going, here's a list of things to go through and the common things, and then kick it off to someone else when it gets more complex.
It makes total sense to collect all of the things, is the interface up, is my ARP resolving, what are my interface counters and those kind of things. But then the next step is, do you trust your system to automatically try to remediate the...
Right, it's going to take some time, right?
Yeah.
And you still have to have the system architected to be able to support that.
Yeah.
And if you don't design it right, you can have the best automation in the world, but if the underlying infrastructure doesn't support that view, and how often does that infrastructure change?
Yeah.
We say never, but we all know that new pods get added to data centers, new technology gets upgraded because end of life happens or depreciation happens of assets. Somebody needs to be able to keep an eye on that too. And it can't always be us as the engineer, architects, and consultants with the customer. I think it's where it comes back to somebody on site being able to say, I talk to the architects, there's new technology, here's how it can help us, here's how we have to automate it, but somebody's got to be able to internally to shepherd some of that stuff. I mean, we can help it as much as we can, but I think internally customers need to have, maybe not this, if we keep coming back to it, the super senior CCIE, CCD level, but they need to have a good somebody who understands the architecture, who understands where things are going.
Sure.
And be able to hear where the company wants to go.
Yeah, which is huge.
So just bridging the business and then the technical side at a high
Yeah.
level, and not knowing maybe how to implement everything from the ground up, right?
Or the new technologies, like the new cloud technologies, or hey, we want AWS, we want Azure, we want the next cloud provider. How do we work with it?
Exactly.
They don't have the experience. They need to come to people who've felt those pains.
Yeah, which is why you should get Usavar. Now, which is why we exist. Why the
And here's
value
my
added
business
part.
card.
Yeah, but the value added part of it is that we've seen everybody else's network, and so we can see. Well, whereas the people who are on site work for a company have seen their network primarily, and so we can tell you, oh, I saw this over here. Don't do that, or
Yeah.
do that. That worked well for them.
Or I ran into this problem here, you may want to watch out for the problem there. You're not at there yet. These guys were, but hey, you know what? You're going to hit this one day. Be aware.
Yeah, this thing is coming
Yeah,
or whatever.
and that's the value added part of our
Definitely.
So let's talk about broader. So, I mean, I see a lot of technology trends kind of being a pendulum swing, right? We like this, and now we like this, and then a few years later we like this. Do you think that we ever go back? Do we go back to engineering and architecture being a strong in-house element, or do you think that this is a more permanent direction?
A tough question.
Yeah.
So I think it
Pull
depends
up the crystal ball.
Yes, I think it depends on what else happens that make a business need that, right? I think the business has to come to the conclusion that they do need someone in those roles internally, and then the cost is, the cost is okay to have those internally versus using an external resource.
It's an interesting perspective, and maybe just as a different thing, are there different? We're using enterprise as a very broad category. Is there subcategories in that where maybe like big enterprise definitely needs this?
Yes.
Smaller enterprise may not.
Yeah.
SMB, all the maybe we're focusing the question too broadly.
I think you're right. I think you can probably divide up the enterprise into probably. I mean, I'm just thinking 4 or 5 different subgroups off the top of my head. I mean, I'm sure we could get more than that.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
We have a bunch of
Like
engineers
in,
around the table. I think we can come up with
Yeah.
20 or 30. Sure, why not?
Pretty quickly, right? So I mean, I think we could easily say that maybe a very small SMB doesn't necessarily need a full-time whatever, but then maybe like a Fortune 500 company would need a full-time architect design type of person that can relay all the business requirements and then also have a roadmap of what they're doing from a business perspective. I think that those
I
are
think, like you said, it comes down if you can have a competitive advantage of having like people on staff. Because like if you're a bank and you put all of your trust in just a vendor or a VAR, you need someone in-house to be able to have those skills as well.
And maybe a competitive advantage is for a smaller business to have an architect that they hire when they need it, and they have people just to maintain it, or they outsource that, and they can then focus on the business where they don't have to worry about the IT infrastructure and go to the people who can help them. With the larger companies, right, they need somebody on site who understands where the roadmaps are, who gets the 3-year plans, the 5-year plans. But the smaller companies are trying to live day to day and make the business, and they need help getting there. That's where we come in sometimes, in the smaller ones, I guess.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. We've been talking about enterprise and what how they're kind of approaching things. I want to talk about individuals now, and I want to talk about career path, right? So I know mine. I don't know all of your career paths, but mine came through the enterprise. I started out as a jack of all trades, doing help desk, PC support, server support, and over time specialized in networking. And does that go away? Right? Does that potential career path go away? And then a follow-up question to that is, if someone wants to get into engineering, if someone wants to be a network engineer, all of us here work at a VAR. How do you what's your career progression steps look like if you can't really cut your teeth and learn network engineering and architecture in an enterprise?
That's a great question. Actually, someone just asked me that this morning. They were sitting at a machine.
A slot machine, yeah.
Machine.
We are in Vegas.
Yeah, that's all right.
Retirement.
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 I walked by and said hi. They said, "Oh, let me ask you a question," because they had met someone, a barista, who was in Network Academy and gotten her CCNP and was like trying to find a job now in networking, and it stumped me. So I'm glad we're talking about that, because I was thinking the same thing. I came up through servers and then figured out that nobody touches the network gear, so it's way better. So, yeah.
I've always seen networking is hard to get into to begin with. There's almost an expectation that you know it before you ever start. Like, I don't see a lot of advertisements for junior network people. Like, I just don't. And maybe other places do, but that's just not been my experience. It's almost like you need to have a lot of experience and have been lucky to be able to touch some networking gear and cut your teeth on it, and then you can say you have some experience and get into some like intermediate level position. But like, again, are those things going away?
So, I mean, mine's kind of similar to yours. My experience, like, I kind of got thrown into things. And I went in the military, and I got a lot of training in the military, and they expect you to know everything, not just one specific silo. So, server, security, networking, web design, anything IT, anything with an IP address, they expect you to know how to do it with. Now, when I got out, I did go to some enterprise customers or enterprise companies, And one of the things I noticed is trying to hire a junior network engineer was pretty much impossible. Like a qualified, like someone that actually knew networking. And I'm not saying someone that was like, CCNP level, like even like someone that was a CCNA level that actually like understood subnetting, understood some of the basic stuff. I couldn't find anyone. And this was probably 7 or 8 years ago. I'd have people that said that they knew all this stuff, and when you start talking to them, they don't know anything. They just have it on the resume. So I think there is a pretty big, vast hole, from my experience, at least in the New England area, where you're trying to find these junior engineers and you just can't find them.
So people are looking for them. So the jobs are out there.
I
you
think
say?
there are. I mean, I was looking for them. I was looking for 2 junior network engineers. We had to expand our team, and we hired one, or we hired contractors even, and they just were not good. I mean, they said they had their CCNP, and it was probably just a paper CCNP. So we started actually doing lab tests. Like we actually had developed a lab and had like 10 questions, and if they couldn't answer the 10 questions, then we didn't hire them.
I started out in the enterprise and just like most of the people here started with servers and slowly worked into it, like you were saying, the network. Hey, nobody bothers with that. Okay, let's go take a look at that. It's quiet. And it's always the network now. But yeah, I mean, it's the same. But I think juniors, there is a definite need for them because you need qualified people to help, especially if companies don't want to have senior guys on staff and they need people, at least junior, who can support things. To get into it, like you're saying, you need to be able to understand subnetting, what a router is. Even like I was saying yesterday, understand power, outlets, how to plug in a router, what's a 20 amp versus a 30 amp, little stuff. But I mean, it's when you're doing an install, you're helping a customer, that's the stuff that stops you in the middle of an install if you don't have something so basic. I think there's a definitely place to learn and understand. As long as you understand and you can demonstrate that stuff, I think you'll have skills and you'll be wanted. It's when you just assume that, oh, I have this certification or whatever, something like that, that you're going to get hired. But if you haven't done the work to really learn the material, you're not going to get it. There is a need.
So I go back to the question, then I don't know, because I went to school a while ago and I didn't go for, I went for computer science. So my degree's in computer science, but is there actually a networking engineering kind of degree? I mean, I know there's not really any network design degrees out there, and I've talked to Russ about that at length, and we might want to try and figure out a solution for that. But like, is there actually network engineering degrees out there that give them the basic knowledge of subnetting and how to rack equipment in a rack? Or
I think we're starting to see some of that. I'm hearing about some small programs, but they're point. Like they're this one place does this. Yeah. This one place, like it's not widespread. It's not like often, right? Like a lot of the people that I work with are CS graduates because that was
the one,
right? And that was the one you could get. But I mean, CS focused so much on programming and system architectures that while that knowledge is valuable as it relates to networking, it isn't directly correlated. It's not the basic experience we expect out of a junior person who knows the power differentials, how to rack gear, and how to do the practical stuff. Like that stuff starts becoming practical when you start getting to the higher end and understanding deep down how things are happening. Like that's so there's definitely been a gap there. I've heard the same thing from Russ. Like this, there needs to be an education program for.
For both. I mean, network engineers and then design as well. I mean, I actually have a business design approach, but I mean, I know in my experience, if I hadn't gone in the military, I don't know if I would be in network engineering because I had a computer science degree, and I would have probably gone down that route further without having any experience. I would have probably got like a Java programming job or something versus a junior network engineer job.
Right. I feel like I fell into it. If the circumstances and situations had been different, I would be doing something different now. Yeah. Mainly because I don't know, I feel lucky, right? I just happened to be at the right place at the right time where there was a network that needed to be managed and I wasn't afraid to do it. Right.
That was then kind of networks weren't as front and center and critical as they are now.
Right.
Now
I caused a lot of outages that would now not be acceptable. That were okay then, right?
It's now the electricity. It's part of it's the plumbing of a house. It's the water of a house. Now it's required. It's not like it's nice to have. It needs to work, and it needs to work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So am I hearing that we all agree that it's actually harder now than it's ever been? I'm trying to summarize this. Is it harder now to get into networking? Is there a path? Or do you just have to be lucky, or go through the military where they force you to learn everything? Be a network
Maybe you
engineer.
need to, like, if you can't work in the enterprise, then maybe you need to work for a service provider or another type of.
Right. I mean, service providers are a great avenue simply because their whole job is networking. You'll cut your teeth quickly in a service provider. But I mean, again, their business is delivering networking. How often are they going to be hiring junior people?
people starting out. Yeah.
VARs look for them because they need somebody to support Knox. I mean, for managed services stuff, they need people who first line can at least read the scripts, follow the stuff, get the tickets, and be able to escalate. And that may even just be an interesting way to get into it, where you start hearing the terms, you start working, and you find mentors. I think that's the other big piece is if you're going to get into the field, try to find a mentor. I mean, whether it's online mentor on Twitter, on Facebook, on whatever type of social media, but if you can find people, you can ask questions, you can start to build relationships, start to network with other people, not just keep throwing out your resume to apply for jobs.
So a complete plug for our other episode. That's what our previous episode was all about. So we're going to be releasing 2 episodes from Cisco Live, and the other one's all about the value of conferences and social media. And so if you're watching this and haven't watched that one, go watch that now.
But so to your point, right? So like where I work now at E+, we hire junior engineers that they don't have the basic skills, but we do this and we mentor them from the ground up. Like we have a subset of you need to know these things within the first 6 months. And I mean, some of these people, they don't know how to rack equipment. Like, and I mentioned that because that's in my mind such a basic thing. And you mentioned power. Power is such a basic thing that they're coming out of school, they just don't know this stuff. So that's how we handle it. I'm not sure that's the right approach long term, but we're just trying to find a way.
Sorry, Denise.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was like reading just this morning about a consulting company that they had such a shortage of people available to hire, so they're starting their own program now to like take them out of university and then like give them 6 months or something where they like need to learn the skills needed to become a consultant. And I think we're gonna see more of those kind of initiatives because there's gonna be a shortage of qualified staff, and like if you talk to Russ White, he always talks about protocols and algorithms, and like a real engineer tries to like understand how something really works. And now if we're going more and more towards like vendor solutions where everything is automated and orchestrated, we're going to have a shortage of people actually knowing how it really works in the back end. So.
And I would say one more thing on what we're looking for from my perspective is, since we couldn't find people that had the basic skills, we look for people that had the personality, culture fit, and then also the ability to learn and the drive to learn, right? If you have the ability to learn and the drive to learn, I can teach you anything. And the team can teach you anything. I'm sure we all could teach anyone anything if they had those characteristics. So that's what I search for right now. I would love to get qualified people on the first day. That'd be awesome. But right now I don't see that actually happening.
They're just making it happen.
Yeah.
But how can you be qualified if what you've done is gone to Network Academy or studied on your own or whatever? You haven't had that experience. So you've got to find it someplace.
Yeah.
And to find someplace that needs like NOC engineers or junior engineers that you'll be mentored to bring up, or an enterprise that has a company that needs like someone starting out and then will work with you and teach you that stuff and not go, what, you don't know this? Well, you're fired. But we'll understand that. I think that's something, if I were a junior engineer starting out, I'd be looking for someplace that will help me learn and grow and further my career. Assuming that your scenario is not not the future, and there is a future for network engineers.
I do think there's a future. So just to take on, I do think there's a future for network engineers. I just don't think that enterprise customers, enterprise companies are going to have a ton of people on the team. I think they're going to have like administrators or whatever you want to call it, like guys that and ladies that kind of just monitor the network. Monitor the network. They do break fix issues. They do add moves, changes. And that's their day. That's it. And then there's going to be maybe the one or two, like we've discussed, depending on the size of the enterprise, that is, a design architect expert, but more on the business side too, being able to relay all that. I think that is where it'll go for the next probably 5, 10, maybe even 15 years.
All right, with that, I think Zig gets the last word today. I think we're out of time. It was a great conversation. Thank you all for being here and participating in it. I also want to thank Gestalt IT for letting us crash their place here at the Mandalay Bay and record. If you have not checked it out yet, they have a new podcast called the Gestalt IT On-Premise Roundtable Podcast. Very similar to what we do here. If you like what we do, you probably like what they're doing. A bit broader, covering a bit more of the IT space than just networking. So you should check that out. If you want to find more networking episodes, things that we're doing here, you can go to thenetworkcollective.com. We talked about some of the other things we recorded here at Live. We have a bunch of backlog from things we've recorded the past few months. So you can check that out there. You can also find us on Twitter at NetCollectivePC. And thanks for listening.